Kylie, new U.S. sanctions on Russia today. I mean, we've seen a series of these. They come periodically. Is there something particularly different or impactful about these new sanctions?
Well, listen, what Treasury Department is saying is that these are some of the most significant sanctions that we have seen to date. A few things that we should note. First of all, the United States is taking a lot of this action alongside G7 allies. So they're not just cutting off these entities, these companies, these individuals from the U.S. banking system, but also from all of the countries that are part of the G7. This is a widespread effort from the U.S. government. Treasury is involved, State Department's involved, Commerce Department is involved. State Department, on its end, is rolling out 200 plus new sanctions on individuals and entities for supporting Russia's war in Ukraine, going after proxy groups in Ukraine. That's just one example. Commerce Department is going after exports that are going to Russia. That is critical right now. They are targeting more than 90 companies across the world, we should note, including Chinese companies that are enabling Russia's military to evade sanctions that are already in place. That is really critical here. And another thing that they're doing is going after Russia's mining sector, its mineral sector. Those are some of the sectors that are enabling Russia to prop up its economy while it continues to wage this war. We're also seeing from the Biden administration today $2 billion in additional weaponry to Ukraine. We have heard the Biden administration talk about the fact that this additional support was coming. It includes ammunition, artillery, drones. And I think it's important to note that just last night on the CNN town hall, we heard from a Ukrainian soldier on the front lines asking National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan for more ammunition. So that is one of the exact things that the United States is giving them more of today. But what this list does not include is more advanced weapons that the Ukrainians have been continually asking for. Guys?
There's always a new weapon system that they're asking for. Kylie Atwood, thanks so much.
And we're joined now by former U.S. Army Captain Matt Gallagher. He actually traveled to Ukraine when the war began and spent weeks training a group of civilians in combat basics and self-defense.
Matt, also a contributing writer for Esquire. He wrote a piece on volunteers and foreign fighters who've dropped everything, risking their lives to defend Ukraine. And Matt, it's good to have you on. You have your own military service in your background. What struck me reading your piece is the cause, right? I mean, you describe it as fighting at democracy's edge. And you asked one of those volunteers, and he said that not once have I asked myself, are we doing the right thing? Do you find that commitment to the larger cause is still there after 1 year of bloody fighting, a bloody war? Is it fading at all, or is it held fast?
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. Jim, I think it's held fast. I was really struck by the resolve, both of the local Ukrainian volunteers that we met with and spent time with, whether knitting ghillie suits, rolling homemade cigarettes in community gyms, and also the internationals, many of whom you just quoted William McNulty, who heads up Operation White Stork, and they hand out medical tourniquets to frontline soldiers and territorial defense teams. And they spoke often, William amongst them, of the difference of resolve in this war, because it's an existential fight. If Ukraine loses, there is no Ukraine. So Ukraine must win. There's just not a question about it.
I mean, when we met volunteers like that there, what struck me is that some of them are veterans, they have fighting experience, but some of them are, I mean, we met nurses, right? Folks who had not been in combat zones before, willing to risk their lives.
And holding a gun for the very first time. Matt, you were there at the beginning of the war, then you went back a few months ago to kind of see how things were almost a year in. What changed during that span of time in terms of the volunteer and foreign fighters that you had helped train?
I think there was a understanding that this was going to be a slog, just kind of like Clarissa Ward just mentioned a couple minutes ago, that the welders, the bus drivers, the teachers that we had trained in February and March, now we're fighting. We spent an evening this last trip in November with a territorial defense team of drone hunters in the Mykolaiv area. You know, these are regular people who all of a sudden spend every night armed with a Browning machine gun on the back of pickup trucks, waiting for a call to shoot down the Shahed kamikaze drones that may be inbound to protect their community, to protect their homes. And again, these were just regular people 1 year ago who felt helpless, who felt like victims, and now they've decided to become agents of resistance, agents for their country. And it really, that resolve really permeates every aspect of Ukrainian society across social, economic, and cultural divides in a way that I think it's hard for Americans who haven't been there maybe to understand.
Are these volunteer fighting units? I mean, they bring people from all over the world, many with combat experience, but a lot not with combat experience. Are they integrating well into, have they integrated well into Ukrainian defenses? Are they a key part of Ukraine's defense?
Right. Yeah. Early in the war, there were a lot of really kind of bad stories that came out from those kind of early volunteers, those early legionnaires, because the Ukrainian military was just trying to throw everything they had to stop the Russian advance. I think there were a lot of hard lessons learned from those days. And, speaking to the international legionnaires, this most recent trip, a couple things have happened. One, the Ukrainian military has gotten very organized. Every international military group is headed up by a Ukrainian company commander. So there's integration into their defense. And also the reality is, after a year, the people that are there for the right reasons have stayed. Any kind of war is going to attract some lost soul types and some goons. They have been weeded out for the most part, is what we found. And the people still there fighting, both Ukrainian and international, they're there because they believe in this cause, and they're going to stay until it's over with.
Yeah, war can do that. Well, the piece is The Secret Weapons of Ukraine. It's in Esquire right now, and it really is worth a read. Matt Gallagher, thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Russia's war on Ukraine has been a series of instances of disbelief disrupted by reality, sometimes surprising reality. In the weeks before the war, many doubted Putin would invade, even as the U.S. declassified intelligence showing Russia's enormous military buildup. When Russian tanks did move in and the missiles started falling, we were there. This is the scene of one of the missile strikes this morning. You can see the emergency responders back here. But as we arrived, another air raid signal went off. The soldiers concerned that this will be a secondary strike on the same target. Many doubted, once again, that Ukrainian forces could successfully defend their country for so long. Those same U.S. intelligence assessments predicted Kyiv would fall within days, but it didn't. People doubted the Ukrainian people would stand together. We watched them volunteer to fight in droves, and they are still volunteering and still fighting. They doubted Europe's hospitality for millions of Ukrainian refugees would last. We watched them head for safety, and those refugees, those families, they're still welcome in Europe. Many also doubted that the U.S. and its allies would unite, would stay together, but NATO is perhaps stronger than before, and Europe is stopping the flow of Russian energy it depended on at great economic cost to itself. As Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark Milley told me early on, Ukraine is a defining battle for the world.
This is left to stand. If there is no answer to this aggression, if Russia gets away with this cost-free, then so goes the so-called international order. And if that happens, then we're entering into an era of seriously increased instability.
Well, we are seeing that increased instability now, from growing Russian threats to other nations in Europe, such as Moldova, to a worsening standoff with China. But Ukraine, defying expectations, has survived the year and more. Joining me now to discuss the war, where it stands, Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley from Illinois. He's co-chair of the Congressional Ukraine Caucus. He's been to Ukraine himself as well. Congressman, thanks so much for taking the time this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
So we're a year in today, remarkable to imagine. Do you see any way out of this war? There have been hopes that Putin might be exhausted by this, see the writing on the wall, but he's doubling down. Should we prepare ourselves for a much longer war there?
In a couple hours, I'm going to go to St. Nicholas School here in Chicago and go to a prayer service for those students. 70 so of those students are Ukrainian refugees. Wow. It's hard for me to go there and not be committed to giving their home country the weaponry it needs to win and not be in a long stalemate. I fear that we're giving them just enough to be a static war and have it protracted. As you said in this opening, I think Putin is not going to get war weary. I'm concerned that the West might. So, and indeed, what I've been saying since the first day of the war is we need to give them whatever they need to win this war.